You're listening to the Government Mule podcast, a production of the Tulsa County Clerk's Office in Oklahoma.
All right. So here we are on, I guess this would be episode 3 of the Government Mule podcast. I'm your host, Tulsa County Clerk Michael Willis, joined by the Honorable John Fothergill, our County Treasurer. And we're going to cover several things today. We're going to talk a little bit about the county's budget, which we talked about in the last episode with some of my budget team. We're talking about the Treasurer's Office and what all they do. We have a unique relationship as far as kind of government goes and how our offices work together. And then we're talking about some other cool stuff. So we'll just dive right in. Yesterday we had a continuation of our budget process. We had a special meeting, or actually not a special meeting. We had a regular meeting of the Tulsa County Budget Board yesterday. And we looked at employee raises, longevity pay, retirement contributions, but the biggie really was the target overrun requests. What sort of highlights would you want to talk about, Treasurer Fothergill, about that process from yesterday?
Well, we started out with a lot of requests, and we have always limited amount of funds. And so we try to figure out which ones are the best to ensure that Tulsa County citizens are getting the best services that we can, and we can't fund them all, and that's unfortunate. So we try to find which ones are the best, and sometimes we can find creative ways to finance them, and sometimes we find that they aren't, the entire request isn't needed. And so through our processes, we whittled those down, and I think we did really good on finding the right ones so far.
I'll throw a shout out here to John. In our budget hearings we had a couple weeks ago, there was some discussion about some pretty big ticket items. Our building department, building ops, facilities, whatever they're called,
facilities management
these days, had a pretty big project for a building controls system for our courthouse. And I know this is real sexy information that you want to hear about, but it is your money and your operations going on here. But they had requested a couple $1 million for this project, which is a real big ticket item, one of the biggest we had on our list. And John here, asked him to kind of sharpen the pencil and go back. And they came to us this last week, yesterday, with a major reduction in that project. So it went from a $2 million project to what was it,
$780, I think, or no, $730,000.
$730,000. So that was, more than a $1.2 million change in that project, which, we kind of started out with about $10 million to play with in terms of the ability to fund some of these special requests. So dropping that overall ask from $2 million to less than $1 million was a big deal because we started out with more than $11 million in asks. I want to talk about a couple of the other things that come to our budget process that people may not recognize because we fund operations of public safety, roads, offices like ours, the assessor's office, the court clerk's office, a bunch of the county commissioners' departments. But some of the special requests we get from sort of outside entities are kind of interesting sometimes. And one of my favorites is the specialty court. They run over in the court district, we have a veterans court, mental health court, drug court, DUI court, and there could be another one in the mix there. But they're operated by funding that comes from us, even though we're not necessarily obligated as the county government to fund it because it's really a state government function. But then the Oklahoma Mental Health Department is supposed to kick in for most of their stuff, and then they get some grants. This year, the mental health department at the state level didn't really come up with the amount of money that they had committed. And so Erica and her team over there came over and asked us for a little bit more. Both John and I are pretty passionate about those programs because they keep people out of jail. They do a really good service for our public. And yesterday we approved, I think, money to assist in their operations and give their employees a little bit of a pay raise. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah. And I will say they also help free up a lot of the court space. If you didn't have these specialty courts, the dockets on the regular court dockets would be, twice as long. And so that helps them out as well on the court side. And like Michael said, if we can divert somebody from going to jail through one of these specialty programs, well, that means they can go back to work. That means they can go back to their family. And, that's important for Tulsa County. And so it's worth it, I think, to help fund those.
100%. It's one of my favorite programs we fund. Unfortunately, our funding's a little tighter this year, so we're having to make some more difficult decisions. And their funding is tighter because the state's not really living up to what they've committed to do to fund that program. But at least for this year, we're in good shape. We've funded them to go on for another year. That's a big deal. Any other of the budget items from yesterday you want to talk about?
Yeah, I like the OSU Extension Center. That serves all of Tulsa County. They do a lot of great programs, the Master Gardeners. They have the 4-H program that they run through there, and they do outreach throughout the county as far as nutrition and health and homesteading type stuff. They go out and above and beyond, and we were able to help them with their computers this year. Their computers were old and out of service, and so we're able to help them replace it. I think it was $13,000, but
$13,500 or something like that.
Every penny counts, and so we look at everything, and I was happy that we were able to do that one there.
One of the real big ticket items on the county's budget overall is infrastructure and roads. We had lots of discussion about our engineering department. Just so everyone is clear, the way engineering and highways works here is we have a county engineer who works for the county commissioners. He has a core staff here in our building, at the administration building here downtown. But then they have 4 district offices out in the county. So each county commissioner has a district office that handles maintenance and minor to moderate level construction projects. And then we have a highway construction division that's located out off of 169 in South Owasso, North Tulsa County out there, and they do some of the bigger projects. We are probably the only county. Go ahead.
Most of the bridge work is done through that office. That's their big task that they do.
Yeah, we got a bunch of bridges in the county, close to 200, I think, bridges that the county crew has to take care of. But so we're probably the only county. Maybe there's 1 or 2 other counties in the state that put money from our general fund budget, so essentially property tax and other service-related revenues that come in. We're one of the only counties that put anything from that into the highway operations. The last several years, our county engineer and the county commissioners have requested quite a few $1 million of assistance. Everybody on the budget board, I think every single person is very pro-infrastructure. We want our crews to be able to get out and pave roads and whatever. This year we had some real big asks, and we had quite a bit of discussion on it. You want to talk about any of those?
Sure. So unbeknownst to you, but as we were walking in here, I had a discussion with Alex Mills, who is our county engineer and the best one we have. And he was talking to me about the salt barn, which we had a discussion about yesterday, and he thinks that price might be a little bit more than what they need for that salt barn, and so that was great to hear. But there's a lot of requests as far as capital needs. They need machineries. They need some buildings built, and so we were able to tap into the capital reserve fund and tackle some of those this year, which is great. It allows us to be able to stretch our general fund dollars a little bit more. But we do put some general fund dollars into maintenance, and Tulsa County is unique in that most of our roads in the county are not dirt or gravel or easily maintained with a grader. I have a piece of property out in Garfield County that I own with my brother and my father, and it's a dirt road. If you have a house, you get gravel up to your house, but anything that doesn't have a house on it, it's just dirt. And so to maintain that, all you need is a motor grader, and you just run it up and down after big rainstorms. In Tulsa County, almost everything we have is made out of asphalt or concrete, and we might have signalized intersections, and people don't realize, but those signals are $300,000 for one intersection, and so that's why we're starting to do roundabouts, because you don't have to pay for that infrastructure of that signalized intersection, and it's also, believe it or not, a little safer as far as insurance. They'll tell you that a roundabout is safer than going through a lighted intersection. So, we are trying to be smarter and wiser with our dollars, but we put some of our general fund, and that takes away from being able to maybe put another sheriff out there or doing something else in the county but we think it's important at this point. I've said, you have said, all the commissioners have said that we wish the state would provide more funding through the motor vehicle tax or the license plate tax that's collected. But we'll have to fight those fights another year. This session's already over, and we'll try to increase our funding that way. We did get increase in our bridge funding construction thanks to the commissioners and their efforts to host a lot of the legislators in our Tulsa County and show them the condition of our bridges. Oklahoma, as a state, the what do they call that? On the books bridges for ODOT. We are now in the top
system.
On system. Thank you.
Yeah.
We are now the top 10 in the country. But our off system bridges, which are the ones that the counties and the cities are in charge to maintain. We are not. We're still in the lower 40s, I think, on our bridges. So while we've had a lot of good success on the statewide level, we need to increase our success in the county and city level. So
yeah, I would say, just to touch on what John said about going to get additional funding, Commissioner Stansley, our District 1 County Commissioner, really led the charge on that last year. Without his efforts, I don't believe that funding would have been approved. So that's going to be a good thing for the whole state, and it will certainly help, I think, as we try to work to refit our bridges and that sort of stuff. Well, let's shift gears a little bit from the budget process. We still have a little bit of work to do on the budget. We haven't finalized everything yet. And as we talked about in the last episode, we will have an opportunity for public to come in. Of course, we encourage public input at any given time in the budget process. You can always email me. You can email John, any one of the rest of our 6 other budget board members to talk about your input, ideas, thoughts, complaints, questions about the budget or what our priorities are. But we've got a little bit of work left to do on that, and that process will go on for another, at least another month and a half or so before we finalize things. But let's talk a little bit about the Treasurer's Office. So There's probably out there maybe some misunderstandings about how county finance works. A lot of people, when I tell them that the county clerk's office handles accounting and finance work and general ledger and assets and payroll and all that kind of stuff, they say, well, I thought the county treasurer office did that. So maybe shed a little bit of light on some of your duties, and then we'll talk about how our offices work together.
Sure. So I often tell people that I'm more like the county bank, and you guys are the county accounting firm. And so we reconcile off each other, but I'm more in charge of collecting the funds and investing those funds. We have accounts all over Tulsa County with banks to invest those funds right here in Tulsa County. So we try to keep all of your tax money in Tulsa County as best we can. And so once we invest in those banks, we make sure that the money is paid back out to the taxing entities. And so we send checks every month to the schools, to the library, to the health department, back to the Tulsa County General Fund from our tax collections. Most people think, well, I only pay my taxes in December or March. And that's true for most people, but there are people that pay taxes every day of the year that we're open. Some of them are delinquent, and so we have a whole department that handles delinquent taxes because if you miss your payments for a long enough time, 3.5 years, at the end of that 3.5 years, I have to sell your property for those delinquent taxes. So, tax collection, although it seems like it's just, a couple times a year, we work on it every day, especially those delinquent taxes.
So traffic gets a little bit heavy in our building a couple times a year. So for the regular people like me, at least I have a mortgage. So if you have a mortgage, generally how are your taxes getting paid?
So usually, I want to say it's in the 98 or 99% people have it at escrow. And so you'll pay to your mortgage company. Part of your payment goes for taxes. Usually some of it's for your home insurance, and the rest goes to your mortgage. And so they hold it in escrow in a separate savings account, in other words, and hold that. And at the end of the year in December, mortgage companies are required to pay the entirety of the tax at the end of the year. So by December 31st, we'll get a check from your mortgage company, or sometimes they'll use a third-party processor and bundle it up and send us all big checks at the end of the year to cover the mortgage holder's responsibility on taxes. And the reason that is because the mortgage company wants to make sure you pay your taxes so that I don't sell your property because they have interest in it.
So for the folks that are, again, just regular tax-paying citizens that may have paid off their mortgage, or they may just, own their property, may have paid cash for it, or they may have some other financing arrangement. There are mortgages that don't have escrows attached to them or other financing things. What are their options for payment?
So if it's a homestead, and that's determined by the assessor's office, but in general, if you're a homestead, you can pay half, up to half or more by December 31st, and you pay the remaining balance by March 31st. If it's not a homestead or it's a commercial property or whatnot, you have to pay it all by December 31st. And so we try to make sure that everybody's able to have the ability to pay their taxes either here in the office, or you can pay it online. There's a 1-800 number you can call. And we also do some remote cashiering between Thanksgiving and Christmas. We go out for 3 weeks, and we're in 5 different banks all around Tulsa County, including the city of Tulsa, and try to make it easier for people to pay those taxes without having to come downtown to our office. But we do get a lot of traffic here at 6th and Denver at our office, and we're happy to have them in our, come pay as well.
Yeah, it's not always convenient for people to come downtown. Although I would say today it's more convenient than it was, let's say, we moved into this building more than 5 years ago. When you had to come to the courthouse, when we both officed over there, parking was a lot tighter. We do have free customer parking now just south of our building, which is nice. So come see us if you need to come see us. We'd love to have you. Free parking. Most days that lot is not full, so come on down and see us. Pay those taxes 1 or 2 times a year. So let's talk a little bit more about how our offices work together, because you mentioned that, we really are kind of a 1-2 punch, if you will, as it relates to county finance work. So my office collects fees every day from people that come in and either buy copies of land records or come in and record a deed or some other document in our office, and we cashier those people there in the office. And then a couple times a day, we're sending people up to visit your office, because the treasurer's office does act as our bank. So any office in the county, whether it's a park taking fees for recreation or other shelter reservations or anything like that, or whether it's the county clerk's office, or whether it's one of our other offices, our inspections office, assessor's office, any of us that take any money come visit you every day.
Yes. So we, like I said, are the bank. And so it's required by state statute that you have to deposit your money within 24 hours. And so we get deposits every day from all the various departments, and take those and record them, apply them to their accounts, and then we put them in the bank. And so we do that every day. Try to make sure that everybody has their funds available to them immediately.
So all county offices do that with the treasurer's office. In terms of the way the money flow actually works, John mentioned earlier that he does apportionment. We actually technically work together to do that, although your office does most of that now, to apportion out the tax dollars and other funds that come in that go to the taxing entities. But in addition to that, we basically keep a mirrored set of books. One of the really great systems of controls we have in county government in Oklahoma really is that is the county clerk and the county treasurer keep a mirrored checkbook, if you will. And we have to reconcile that once a month, although our staffs work together really daily. So, like, for example, whenever we build the payroll in the county clerk's office, we'll put all the data and everything together for that payroll, and then present it to the county treasurer's office for them to release to go to the banks.
Yeah. And so, we've talked before with the state auditor, and they'll tell anybody that county government is the most secure form of government, the most open form of government and the most transparent form of government. And, that's because we do keep two sets of books. You can't touch mine, I can't touch yours. And so if they're off, then we figure it out and figure out why. And because of that, we are almost above reproach. And so that's great to have that kind of thoughtfulness and faithfulness in your numbers that, if you got them right and I got them right, we're right. So we appreciate having that balancing act, and it's because of state statute, but I think it really helps the citizens of Tulsa County be assured that every tax dollar is accounted for twofold at least, between your office and our office.
For sure. Yeah, in my office, we have an accounts payable group that audits all of our purchase orders and all that. We have a purchasing office, or procurement, we call it now, that's separate actually from both of our offices, that help ensure that we are purchasing things and buying goods and services in the right way. And then we match up our stuff every month. Sometimes things don't add up and we have to go to work and figure out where something is. But thankfully we've got, speak for my group, and I think you'd say the same thing, we have incredibly smart people that work for us. I say all the time that, all my folks are smarter than me, which is a good thing. And they work hard to make the right things happen and, balance out our stuff.
Absolutely. I tell everybody every time I go out that, I don't do the day-to-day stuff, that the people that work in my office do that. And we are one big team, and without them, I am nothing. So, they go out and do all the hard work. And a lot of them have been here for a long time and are truly dedicated to the citizens of Tulsa County. And I love that I'm a part of that team and able to help lead them. So.
Yeah, for sure. One of the other things that we work together on that I think is important, and this impacts all of our taxpayers, is our transparency initiative. So back when I started as county clerk in 2017, we had an issue with our transparency was good. We published things in the paper. We make budget books that show what our budget looks like and all that kind of stuff. One of the things I thought we were lacking is, being able to actually view our dynamic financial data, because it changes. We were just talking about the budget process. We will print a budget book towards the end of June. It'll be real nice. It'll be about that thick or so, have lots of great information in it. But anyone who understands budgeting knows a budget is a plan.
But before that comes off the press, that budget has probably already changed a couple times in a couple different ways that we didn't foresee. And that's, it's a plan, but, all plans change, as you go throughout the process. So.
Right. So what we did is we employed our transparency initiative. We have a portal on our website. We use a company called OpenGov, which is pretty cool. Every week we pay bills. So at the Board of County Commissioners meeting, the commissioners generally approve our list of bills. Ranges anywhere from probably 400 to 700 bills per month, per week that we're paying out. So checks and EFTs and money transfers going out the door. You can actually log on and see our checkbook, which I think is really cool. And that's something we work together on. I pay for part of that service. John's office pays for the other part. We don't use tax dollars per se. We use money from fees that come into our office. So it's a nice thing, I think, for us. I enjoy using it as well. It's a management tool for me, but it's also great for our taxpayers.
Well, it opens the door for everybody to see every penny that's spent in Tulsa County. And when you have that accountability, I think it lends the trust that people have in Tulsa County. The ability for anybody to, dig in and see how much our electric bill is at, La Fortune Golf Park, or, where we spend our dollars, I think that's important. I don't think that we have another institution in and around Tulsa County that has that kind of financial detail available to the citizens. And so I'm very proud of that. And thank you for leading that initiative. And, I think there's a Sunshine Award that we won at one point that, our openness and transparency in government. And I appreciate you taking the lead on that, and glad to help you, finance that.
It's a joint effort for sure. Let's go back to one thing I forgot I did want to mention or ask you. So you are essentially the county's chief investment officer as well as being the revenue collector. And you do have money parked in banks throughout Tulsa County. How do you choose those?
So we have a list that's approved by the County Board of Commissioners. They have to approve any investment policy that we have, and the investment policy lists all the banks that we have available to invest in. But we do what I call a blind auction, and so we say, here are the rates that we have today, and we're going to be pulling money. What do you want your rates to be tomorrow? And that way, we get the best rate that we can for the citizens of Tulsa County. We try to keep it, like I said, as much as we can invested in Tulsa County. I think that the money inside the county will just turn over. If the banks can lend that to a local corporation or a company or somebody's for their house or a car loan, that's great. And so we try to keep that invested locally as best we can, and try to get a return on our investments so that the citizens of Tulsa County pay a little bit less in taxes each year. Everything that we invest, the investment income goes into our general fund, and that just means less amount that we have to ask for taxes in the next year.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So I want to talk for just a couple minutes about a couple of the cool things that you do that I hear about. So you talked about your remote locations, and we also told you we'd love to have you down here at our building, but the remote locations are really a big deal around the community. A lot of people don't know the difference between my job and your job and the assessor's job and the court clerk's job or whatever. So we all hear stuff about other people all around the community. Having those remote locations is super nice and people love it. But one of the other things that I really appreciate about Treasurer Fothergill is his callback policy. So he can tell you more about it, but the bottom line is if you call the county treasurer's office today or tomorrow or when they're open and you ask to talk to John, as long as John is available in the office, you're going to talk to John.
That's correct. Or if you come by, you don't have to have an appointment or anything. If you want to come talk to me, I work for the citizens of Tulsa County. My door is always open. My phone is always available. If I'm available, you have my time. That's the contract that I signed up for as an elected official, is that my time is your time because you elected me. And so, yeah, if you call or email or whatever, it's me that you're going to talk to. You won't get pushed off, and you don't have to tell anybody why you want to talk to me. You just say, I want to talk to John, and that's all they need. And I tell all my folks that if you get sideways with anybody, don't hesitate to send them to me, and I'll try to help them out as best I can. So it doesn't bother me to talk to anybody about anything. Again, that's what you elected me for, and that's what we do. And I know you have pretty much the same policy. So
yeah, and the sad thing is sometimes we can't tell people what they want to hear. We have to abide by state laws and policies, and we have to do right by the taxpayer. And so, yeah, I think one of the great things about our organization is I think probably most of our elected officials are pretty approachable, and we're interested in customer service. And I've talked to people before about, why do you elect a county clerk? Or why do you elect a county treasurer? Well, I think what it really comes down to is service to the taxpayer and the customer. And some people have even criticized me over the years about calling people who come into our office customers. But bottom line is they're coming in for a service. And either fortunately or unfortunately, we try to make it fortunate for them. Fortunately, John Fothergill has a monopoly on collecting taxes in Tulsa County. The county clerk's office, have a monopoly on receiving and recording land records and those sorts of things in the county. But we don't want to act like we have monopolies. We are here to serve customers and provide good customer service. So, I tell people that not to pick on anyone, but there are some government offices where you don't get the best customer service. Not every single person that comes into our office is always happy to be there, but we hope and we try really hard to have our staff take good care of them, make sure that they have a pleasant experience. And by and large, I think that's what happens in the county treasurer's office and my office to a degree as well. But you get a lot of people in a short volume of time coming in starting in November, and then another big flux coming in towards the end of March. Not all of them are happy to be there and paying those taxes, but they're treated well.
Oh, yeah. That's our number one thing we have to offer is customer service. So we try to go above and beyond. I always tell my folks, when somebody calls here, I want that to be their last call they make. And that even if we don't have the responsibility for that, whatever they're seeking, that we get them to the right person, and that's the last call that they made. You're right. The only thing we have to offer is customer service, and we don't have to offer it. We could have terrible customer service in our office, and if that's the case, I would expect the people of Tulsa County to elect a different clerk and a different treasurer. But as long as we provide the best customer service, I hope that they would see that they have the right people in those offices. And so that's my motivation, is to make sure that they're as happy as they can be. Nobody's happy paying taxes. I hate paying taxes, but you're going to have the best customer service while you're paying those taxes that you could possibly have.
Yeah, for sure. One other thing to touch on, then we'll get into a little bit of kind of personal business and background, but John talked about this before. You have a resale auction that happens every year in June, and that's due because there are people that don't make those tax payments. And when they get 3.5 years delinquent, by state law, you don't have a choice. By state law, the treasurer shall. There's a difference between a may and a shall. The treasurer shall place those properties on an auction. So talk to us about that process.
So again, it's by state statute, and it says that I shall sell delinquent properties that are more than 3 years delinquent on the second Monday in June. And so we have our sale this year. It's June 9th, and we have it every year at the Civic Center as long as we can rent it out. Last year we had almost 800 bidders. We sold 184 properties, and we did that all in one day. And so we try to be as efficient as we can. It's the worst part of my job. A lot of those properties are unoccupied, but some of them are occupied, and that's never what I want to do. But the reality is, if you didn't have some kind of consequence, nobody would pay taxes. And so we have to have that consequence, and we give everybody 3.5 years and every ability to pay that. But at some point, you got to say that's it. And so one thing I don't think a lot of people realize is that the other taxpayers of Tulsa County are financing that delinquency, and that they pay the taxes and keep the schools and the cities and the counties running at the lack of effort on the other taxpayers that aren't paying those taxes. And so you're basically carrying those loads until I can sell that property and refund the taxpayers. And so it's unfortunate, but it's something we have to do. Like I said, we try every way that we can to get those taxes paid. We send 17, the minimum is 17 notifications in those 3.5 years asking them to pay those taxes. But sometimes people can't or won't or don't want to for whatever reason. And so that's ultimately what we have to do.
So we talked about a rush of customers coming in to pay those taxes on the prescribed dates in December and then March. But you also get a little rush of people coming in to pay some or all of those taxes approaching that second Monday in June, correct?
Yes, and state statute has changed. Last year, you could pay all the way up until I filed the deed in your office. But the law has changed, and beginning at of my auction, once I start the auction, we are no longer allowed to take payments in my office, and we will sell all the properties. And that's a change this year. We've put a notice in all of our mailings that we've done for delinquent property taxes. It's a bright yellow piece of paper, and it says that if you want to take your property out of the auction, that Friday before is the only guaranteed date to make sure that your property is not sold, because at 8 a.m. on Monday, I could sell your property. And once the auction starts, all the properties left in the auction will be sold.
Yeah. So we get, in the county clerk's office, we get a rush of customers that start coming in around that time too. But a lot of them are folks that are interested in properties that might be on the auction block. So they come in to do some research about land records and ownership and all that kind of stuff. How do people know what properties are going to auction? And, if people are interested in being a bidder at your auction, what should they know?
Sure. So we work on what we call the land list, and that's the properties that are going to auction. We do a title search through a title company, and then we try to do gap checks. But at the end of the day, you're right. Those people that are bidding need to take that into their own hands and do their own research and make sure they know what they're bidding on. I've had people bid on empty lots that they thought a house was on and paid a lot more money than what they thought it should have been worth without that house, because they didn't do their research. And so we always tell everyone it's a buyer beware, as is where is, what's ever on that property on the day of sale is what we're selling. And so if you don't know exactly what that is, I encourage you not to bid. But a lot of people can come in and get a lot of that past information out of your office on landowners and what liens are filed and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, we try to be as open and transparent on what we know. There are Oklahoma Health Care Authority liens. Before, we weren't able to discharge those, but now there's a new law. As long as the governor signs it, it's gone through the legislative process. If the governor signs it, then we can ask to have those liens removed, and that'll help sell those properties. Before, it was kind of a cloud that we weren't able to erase on that title, was these healthcare authority liens. And now I can request as the treasurer, if it goes through the sale, to remove those liens, and that gives that property a fresh start. One thing I really love about it is when we sell these properties, the new owners almost always pay the taxes on them. And so, that keeps them operating and functioning as we intend them to, and keeps the property taxes base spread out amongst all the property owners.
So for anybody who's interested in participating in that auction, our advice here is do your research, both online, and if you see a piece of property you think you want to bid on, go actually look at it. Because there have been instances, like you mentioned, where folks will do some research online. They might get on Zillow, they might get on another real estate-related website. They may come get on our county assessor's page, which the county assessor's page has photos usually associated with every piece of property. And there have been times when someone thought they were bidding on a property with improvements such as a house, a barn, other structures on it, and then they make the winning bid and go out and see their property and see that there are no structures on that property. And so that's something to make sure you consider if you're going to be part of that auction. I mean, John and I even talked before, we may here in a couple of weeks do another podcast episode to talk a little bit more about the real estate auction, just as a reminder for folks. So that's something to consider.
Yeah, the general idea is, make sure you know exactly what you're bidding on. We've had people before that there was an empty lot, and it was just a little sliver of a lot in between two houses. And so one guy thought he was bidding on one house, another guy thought he was bidding on another house, and they were both really bidding on an empty strip of land in between two houses. And, they weren't aware of actually what they were bidding on. And it was unfortunate because I had to take the winning bid, and that guy was not happy when he found out there was no house on the strip of land he was bidding on. So.
Yeah. So be careful about that. So let's switch to another deal as we kind of start to wrap up here. So one of the things I want to do with the Government Mule podcast is, talk about. I joke that I'm kind of Government Mule. We're elected 24/7. We both, I know, in both of our cases, field phone calls, emails, all that kind of stuff at all times. So we work like an old school Government Mule used to work. But John has a really interesting background, and we've known each other for a long time. We met originally, I guess it would have been in about 2005 or so. Is that when you went to work for the city?
Yeah.
So I worked for Mayor Bill LaFortune when he was mayor of the city of Tulsa back between 2002 and 2006. John and I met when he started working with the city council. But John's path to government service is pretty interesting. And it can be a long story, but you can give us maybe the Cliff's Notes version of how you even came into government service.
Sure. So, I had no intention of working for the government. I actually worked in a lumberyard for quite some time out of high school and during college, and got a job from that lumberyard to work overseas for a year and a half in Kosovo as a contractor, a Department of Defense contractor through a contractor that worked for the Army. And at that time, I had no idea exactly what I was getting into, but the U.S. Army, starting under President Clinton became what's called a fighting force only. And so they don't do any of their, they don't wash their clothes or cook their food or build their houses or take care of their maintenance or anything like that. They have contractors do that. And so that's what I was hired to do in Kosovo. Worked over there for 18 months and, had a great time. Came back home. A girl I was dating, I got interested in her and decided I wanted to marry her and asked her if I could go work overseas for another year. Got a job in Iraq doing the same thing, working for the Army during 2004, and did that for a year and really enjoyed that time. It was a little hairy there for a while, but, having service, I don't know, it got to me. Came back home, started working for a friend of mine at his business. Didn't really have any kind of career goals at that point in that business, but just something to fill my time, and got a call from my sister-in-law who worked over at the city council office and said, hey, they're hiring you for a council aide. And I had done debate in high school and college, and so policy was always kind of something of an interest of mine. And so it sounded interesting. It was through a temp service, so I wasn't, guaranteed a job or anything like that. So went through the temp service, got the job, and, hired on full time and stayed there for 12 years. And, if you would have asked me probably a year before that if I would ever work for the government, I probably would have laughed at you. I think the bigger the government is, the more bureaucracy and the more headache and frustration and hassle. And so I went from the federal government to a local government, and, local government I think is where it's at. And that's where the rubber meets the road.
Close to the people.
That's where you make the most impact on somebody's life. I tell everybody that, the impacts of government decisions on your life, about 90% of them happen at the local level, a little bit at the state, and even fewer at the federal that actually impact your life on a day-to-day. When you walk out to your door and hit that road's taken care of at a local level. When you turn on your water every day to get a glass of water, to brush your teeth or take a shower, that's done at the local level. That trash can that's outside that gets relieved every week, that's done on the local level, right? And if those things break down, well, you got a lot of things to worry about besides what the interest rate is at your bank.
Yeah.
So we, I think, make that impact, and that really hit me when I worked at the city council, how much of an impact, we have at a local government level. And it really got me into service. I always say that Jeannie Q is my role model, Councilor Jeannie Q in District 2. When she got elected, it didn't matter what she was working on. She did it with all of her heart, all of her soul, and did it because she loved the people of her district. And I got to see that firsthand, and it really flipped me around, changed my perspective on what government can and should be to people. And so the rest, they say, is history.
Yeah. I mean, John worked for Jeannie for pretty much most of the time she was in office till the last few years when you were working here. But that also maybe prompted or got you more involved in your own community. You're proud resident of the city of Sand Springs, where, John's done some incredible things not related to county or city government. And a couple of those things are his kids. He has two phenomenal boys that are both in Boy Scouts and very high achievers and doing some awesome things. But that also led you to really serve your local community as well when you were elected to the city council, right?
Yeah. So, I worked for the Tulsa City Council, and I got called by one of the city councilors in Sand Springs one day about a Board of Adjustment position that was open and wanted to know if I would serve. Well, I recorded 100 Board of Adjustment meetings for TGov on the city council staff, and so that interested me. I knew, how the board worked and what they were, talking about and everything. So, yeah, I said, sure, sign me up. And that was, a volunteer thing. And so after about a year of that, I get a call from that same city councilor, said, your city councilor is going to be moving. He accepted a job out of state, and once he sells his house, he's going to move. Would you want to be appointed? And I thought about it for a minute and said, sure, that sounds like a great idea. He said, well, we don't know exactly when that's going to be, so just hang tight. And so get a call a couple months later and said, hey, he's moving, but we decided that since it's so close to the end of his term, we'll just go ahead and call a special election and fill that position. Would you be interested in running? And I said, let me think about it. So talked to my wife, went home, slept on it, and prayed on it, and decided that's where I needed to go. And so called him back and said, yeah, I think I will. He said, great, I got 2 other people interested in running too. And, little beknownst to me, one of them was a former state senator, and another one was a youth pastor in the community. And so I didn't think I had any chance at all, but I went and knocked all the doors that I could in that district and ended up getting elected as city councilor for Sand Springs in my ward, and ended up becoming the vice mayor of Sand Springs until I had to give it all up to come to the county.
Yeah. So I guess it would have been in 2016 is when I got elected.
December 2016 is when I resigned from the city council.
Yeah, and so I was a chief deputy county commissioner here. I got elected, started as county clerk. John took my old spot as the chief deputy for a few years, and then moved over to the treasurer's office to be chief deputy there, and had the opportunity to kind of take over that office and then run for office, and was successful. So what else you want to add? Anything else we want to talk about, John, before we wrap up this episode?
I just want to say what a great job you've done with this studio. Getting our story out, I think, is important. And that, again, we are the closest to the people, and I think we're the least known as far as government on what we do and how we do it. And so I appreciate you putting this together and allowing us to tell our story to Tulsa County and hopefully to the world. And I look forward to doing a lot more of these.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Yeah. We'll wrap up this episode of the Government Mule podcast. Special thanks to Treasurer John Fothergill for being the guest for episode number 3.
Thank you.
Like you said, we'll do this again. Thanks very much.